Welcome back to Scoundrels Inc., another Star Wars podcast. I'm Frank, along with Kevin and Brandon today. We're going to be talking about a few things. We got that, look, we have a little bit of a controversy. Brandon brought it to our attention, so stay tuned for that. But we're also going to be talking about Star Wars Outlaws. Yes, the trailer and all that stuff came out like a couple weeks ago, but we're just getting to it. But also, there was a question raised about whether or not Qi'ra could make an appearance in the game. We'll talk about the trailer, the gameplay, that's possible theory or whatever you want to call it, Wookie. But also, before we also get into it, we're gonna but give you a little bit of a spoiler review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. All of us have seen it, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Interdimensional beings, as a matter of fact.
Interdimensional beings are not in Indiana Jones, but also I wanted to ask one thing, guys.
You are an interdimensional being.
Depends on which one you watch, dude.
I wanted to ask real quick if the people watching or listening could just hit subscribe and like this episode, because maybe we're having a bad day. Maybe we're having a bad hour. And it really cheer us up if you hit like, left a comment, subscribe to the channel or the podcast feed as well. If you did all those things, and if you could also follow Kevin Smets on Threads. I heard he just signed up for Threads. He's very excited about it.
Yeah, I can't. Hey, that was a personal conversation. We're late. We had the J.J. Abrams lens flare going, but then we got into our own conversation before the show, which was really funny. But yeah, see you guys all on Threads.
So excited about it.
You'll all be on Twitter till the end of time. We know that's what's happening. But watch, when I join Threads, you guys can all have egg on. I can have egg on my face.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I mean, Scoundrels Inc.
Yeah, how's Scoundrels Inc. on Hive doing? How's that? Are we growing on Hive?
Well, we are on Hive, but we also are now on Threads.
You made me do Hive, and I did it, and I even did that stupid post.
No one made you do anything.
And
you followed the crowd.
I followed the crowd, yeah.
But you're like, not again, Zuckerberg. Yeah.
Not this time.
I think the only thing I posted on Hive was like a behind-the-scenes video, so go check that out.
Yeah. You should put it over on Threads now, just to
So you
just to start over.
Twitter, right? You buzz on Hive, right? Whatever. What is it? What was thread? Am I going to leave a thread? I'm needling.
Yeah. You needle your
thread.
Gonna
needle me?
I'm gonna go needle.
Oh man! Please rethread me. Is that what they say? Rethread?
I don't
know.
Repost. It's just a repost, probably.
I'm just look.
I mean, imagine how stupid this conversation was when Twitter come out. What do you call it? A tweet? That's dumb.
Right. First of all, little bird. Were you a little bird?
Every time you have a thought, you tweet it out like a little bird.
Friend of the podcast, Rick Savage, on the very early podcast of their show a Mega show. The Megas are a band, and they were all in my KOTOR movies. But Rick Savage, who's also a voiceover and a dear friend, was on a podcast in 2008 or 2009, and it was when Twitter was in its infancy, and he literally explaining it to people, and they were like, wait, so it's like Facebook? He's like, no, but it's like you only have this many words, and he was excited because it was at the early part where not everyone was on it, and he tweeted at Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon did a tweet asking for directions, like, how do I get from the Valley to here? Because it was like right when he was moving to LA for the Tonight Show or whatever, and he was asking something, and Rick Savage and it's not the drummer from that one band. It's a different Rick Savage. But Rick Savage tweeted at him, oh, you should go over the Sepulveda Pass, but not after 5 or something. And then Jimmy Fallon had written back to him like, oh, cool, thanks. And now all these years later,
Jimmy Fallon got lost.
Millions of Twitter followers and would never see a tweet from him. But like at that point, but it's funny. We do have, it is in this time capsule where you hear him explaining to everybody. And I just remember it. So maybe one day everybody will make fun of me when Thread is the number one thing, but I'm not holding my breath.
Okay, well, you know what they're probably going to be talking about on Threads? Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. All three of us saw it at various times.
Did you thread after you saw it? Were you did you do an out of the theater thread?
Yeah, I had to do an out of the theater thread. Is what you got to do now after you see movies.
We all saw it at different fissures in time.
Yeah,
exactly correct, Brandon. So Brandon, let me ask you then, because this is going to be spoilers, by the way. And if, by the way, we also last week we did an episode where we went through all of Indiana Jones's past adventures on the silver screen and small screen, Indiana Jones, the Young Indy Chronicles as well. We talked about that actually a lot longer than I thought we would, but that was fun. So if you missed that and you want to hear our thoughts on the past movies and that series, go check it out. A link will be in the description or in the card thing. Brandon, you were the first one of us three to see the movie. How did you contain your excitement?
Maybe because when I walked out of the movie, I wasn't that excited.
Oh no.
Well, see, I don't want to give the wrong idea. Like, I had fun with it. I liked it. But yeah, I think it's crazy. Like, people are gonna hate me for this, but I like Crystal Skull better.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And it's not in like a douchey kind of way, or like a I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe it's because, like, it came out like it was the first Indiana Jones movie I saw in a theater. I don't know. I recently rewatched it in a theater again. I don't know. It seemed like Spielberg brings like a sense of like heart to these movies, no pun intended, with Temple of Doom, but like like it felt like there was like a piece missing from this movie, and I think that was Steven Spielberg. So overall, I walked out of this one not feeling that warmth that I feel watching the other ones. But I've seen plenty of reactions where people are leaving the theater feeling that. So don't just go off of my opinion alone. I know this is a spoiler review, but if by happenstance you're watching this, you still haven't seen it yet and you're on the fence, I'm like, don't take my word for it. Like, there are people walking out of this movie going like, oh my God, that was the perfect way to end it. I walked out of it going like, that just felt like a continuation of the story. It didn't feel like a closing chapter, or like,
interesting.
Crystal Skull felt like a closing chapter to me.
Crusade feels like a closing chapter.
That also,
to a lot of people.
They ended it twice. It's like it's like Lord of the Rings at this point with like 50 different endings.
That's true. Yeah,
it's like he literally rides off into the sunset, and then another movie, and then he like gets married, and then it's like, all right, that's a nice way to end it, and then it's like, oh, he's here again.
True. Kevin.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this article and I can't find it now. I think Mark and Draco is the one who posted it, but I don't think I don't know where it's on Twitter.
I think I know what you're talking about because I did see Mark and Draco repost something.
Was it on Twitter?
Yeah,
it was on Facebook. It was on Facebook. Yeah,
but I'm on his page right now and I can't find it. So now I'm like going through my brain, like, was this a fever dream? Because it has a great sentence from that article that like encapsulates what I feel about it too, but I can't find it. So, I mean, unless I got an old post from him, I'm scrolling 2 days ago.
Okay, well, you keep
found
scrolling.
it.
Oh, you found it. Oh, okay, you found it. Okay.
But yeah, so I came away with it like, first of all, I had been watching the Young Indies, and remember, I was like, I'm gonna wait until I see it all together. Yeah. And I was like, I couldn't wait. And then when I got out of the theater, me and Frank just proceeded to text about how we were both crying during the ending, like. So. Like, I think we liked it a little more than you, Brandon. We didn't walk out like I feel like you walked out and you were like Larry David. You're like, Yeah. I walked out literally. I saw it with my buddy, and we were meeting my wife and kid for sushi afterwards. But I saw it with my buddy, and I had a hat on, and he was next to me, and I saw that I started crying. So I did this, like, because I didn't want him to. If I ever have my hat like this in the theater, to hide from my buddy, I didn't want Johnny to see me cry.
I wish I would have saw Endgame with you. I bet you were a puddle.
Yeah, it was freaking embarrassing. But but that doesn't equal that the movie's good for everyone else, because I cried during this Batman scenes in The Flash, and that's one of the greatest flops of all time. So call me toxic positive or whatever they like to say. No, I'm joking. But for me, the only thing, so anyways, I was worried that when I would be done with it, I would be like disappointed that I wouldn't go back to Young Indy, that I'd be like, okay, I kind of did my rewatch. I'm not going to go back and rewatch it. But actually it made me want to go back and continue my rewatch of Young Indy to see more how it was informed, now knowing the end result. And it really, this article just talks about how it gives him a satisfying ending, Brandon. I would recommend that you read it, just so it might give you a little more appreciation for the ending. But I do think that, like you said, the one thing that's missing is like, how do you? I know they did the map later, but like, you need to do the map if they leave anywhere. And the first time in that movie, when they get on a plane and they go from point A to point B, and there wasn't a map thing, like I remember that like threw me off. I'm like, well, where's the map animation? Like, all of them should have the map. So he does it later, but he didn't do it that first time, which kind of threw me for a loop. And that's just a piece of James Mangold does great. He does the character. That article, the one thing that I'll say is, while he missed on the visual nuances of Spielberg, he nailed the character of Indiana Jones. He knows how to send someone on their swan song, but it's a lot less about having that final great adventure and going off to the sunset that it is him like kind of realizing like he wanted to like be left in the past, like a fossil and like left behind. And it was that character arc of Phoebe, of Helena that wouldn't let him do that because he had things in the present that were waiting for him. You know, half of me thought it was going to go Back to the Future style, and through the door was Saul and Mutt, right? Like that she went back and also pulled a Steve Rogers and put the Infinity Stones back, prevented Mutt from going to the war. But that would have been a little far-fetched. So I like that Marion and him came back, and that line, "Are you back?" That I remember feeling that had a lot of weight, and it wasn't about him physically being back. It was more about, "Are you there now? Or is the Indy that I love back? Are we back?" Right? And then they revisit that thing from the past, because the past can haunt you and hurt you, but their last act together in the movie is revisiting the past, something that brought them together. So I really like that. And then my only other critique, and it's only because I've been doing it maybe too much while I watch Young Indy, which Frank can attest, where I'm like, there's a train sequence, I'm going to play the Indy theme. Like, right? Like they have the Indy theme play early on, like right up top when he's on the train and he's jumping from train to train in the flashback, which was great. And I'm like, oh man, we're back. We're going to get hearing this a lot. And then you hear maybe like one or two off-note iterations of it later in the movie, and then you don't hear it until the end credits. So it's like, if you remember, one of the best parts of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he's like, I don't know, I'm just figuring this out as I go along. And then all of a sudden he's on the horse chasing after the truck caravan, goosebumps. And you hear the theme playing, and everybody's like as he's racing through and I can't wait to revisit that again. He's racing through all those people that were working on the dig site, and it's dun 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 dun. And like there are several parts. Now I did go to the restroom during the New York parade scene, and he's on a horse.
Me too.
Interesting time. It's like right in the beginning of the movie. Jeez.
Hold on.
Small bladder?
I had a couple beers before. You know, I like to get my beers going. No, but here's the thing. Did they play the Indiana Jones theme during that chase? Because then...
I'm trying to remember. I feel
only
like
Frank would know.
Yeah. I feel like they did. So here's the thing. I remember them using a lot of the notes from the song in various spots of the movie a lot, but it was never like the full song. It was never like the full version of it. Not until later, right, in the movie. But I felt like
they had the Nazi theme, which I liked.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Which was cool.
So I felt like it was peppered in, but he was like, I'm not going to go fully, I'm not going to give you the full version yet. I'm not going to give you the full version yet, here and there. And then finally he comes in with the full version later on.
And so the first half an hour, when you hear the Nazi theme and his Indiana Jones theme blaring on the train, I'm like, oh my God, he's Rise of Skywalker in this. If you remember Rise of Skywalker interviews with John Williams, he was like, I'm going to make sure this is a celebration of all the movies. And that's why you have like the mystery theme from Attack of the Clones playing when Zori Bliss is talking to Poe Dameron on that rooftop, and you hear da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Like you had themes, you had Yoda's theme, you had everybody's theme. Like,
can I just?
Combined. So I was really wanting them to have like a best of, like, and they didn't.
Can I just say, I don't know, Brandon, if you'll agree with this, but I was getting a lot of Force Awakens score vibes in this movie, like especially when the horns come in, like Kylo Ren, like the First Order. Like I felt like there was similarities there. It wasn't like Harry Potter and Home Alone or whatever. It wasn't like any of that stuff. It was just like if I just felt like, oh, I can hear notes of like the Force Awakens score in there, but it still works for the movie, which I love that stuff.
Composers like not rip themselves off, because I don't feel like they should be allowed to. That's their style, right? Yeah. And like if you hear the score to Superman the movie in the like 1977. No, that was Star Wars. 1978 is Superman the movie. But Superman the movie, and I'm talking to like the subsidiary music, which you might be talking about, Frank, like just the underscore music that's playing along while something, It's not someone's theme, right? if the Superman the movie, when you hear it, it's a lot of those. It's the same kind of horns and brass section that he uses a lot in A New Hope, and it was because they were like paired right together.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that, Frank. I'll listen for that. It's probably just like this is his now phase. And like in 2002, there were songs that were almost blatantly exact from between Attack of the Clones and Chamber of Secrets. So,
that's what I meant to. That's what I meant to
he
reference.
used to kind of like rip himself off or borrow from his motifs. So, but yeah, if just one grand pronouncement in the middle of the movie of the Indiana Jones theme as he's racing off to do that would have been great. I don't mind taking restroom breaks, especially in a movie I know I'm going to see next time. And so I had to take another one during the final puzzles in the tombs. So I'm excited to see it again because it's like I get like 10 minutes of a new movie because I had to actually go out and make a phone call to my wife to let her know that the movie, dude, AMC theaters, dude, 35 minutes of trailers. So
it's insane.
It's so mind-boggling. So I had to call her. But I knew I'm gonna see it again with my mom in a couple weeks or whatever. So, but one thing I had heard that the boulder, they're in the trailer, there's a shot of them like letting go of a giant boulder, like a circular boulder that's like a Raiders reference, and I hear that's not even in the movie. So I thought I missed it. So apparently,
I don't recollect seeing any reference to that.
I went to the bathroom around that same time again too. So.
Grant, I think we have our like the women have their periods in sync. We have our bladders in sync.
I went to the bathroom when they were in the chase when they were in what was that country? Like the big chase, the big chase. Morocco, yeah. I went to the bathroom during that chase.
Here's the good reason why.
This is going kind of long. I'm not gonna lie. That chase was a little too long for me, but it was fun. I want to
thank Rachel, the Crusher Cushing, for this because she did a tweet that said she loved Indiana Jones, but the action sequences were too long. She's like trimmed a little of the action sequences out, and it would be fine. Yeah. So that's why I knew that. So when I really had to go, I was like, I got to wait for an action scene because I know if I leave at the beginning of the action scene, by the time I come back, I'll get the crux of the action scene.
It's true.
I had a similar.
Started during the parade scene. I was like, thank you, Rachel Cushing. I'm gonna go to the restroom right now.
I had a similar thought because I was like, I don't want to miss any like dialogue about them like referencing other movies or like them like establishing like where Indy is in his life or anything like that was important. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom during the action scenes, and that way I don't miss any like important like plot elements or like references to like the other movies.
I was not gonna go.
Why I left during that cave part though, because
I was not gonna go. Yeah, that's bizarre. I would never leave.
Well,
I would never leave the theater.
I just really had to go at that point.
At that point, I had to really call my wife because there was no coverage in this theater in near La Jolla. It's like underground, and like it's like if there's like a nuclear war, I'm gonna go to that theater and just buy a movie ticket, and I'll be safe under there. But yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up real quick with my final thoughts on the movie, and I liked it a lot. I did. Kevin talked about how we were texting back and forth about, dude, were you bawling your eyes out at the end of the movie? This is literally not an exaggeration, and I'm not afraid to admit this. At the end of the movie, when Indiana Jones is talking to Helena, how do they say your name? Helena?
They say it both ways.
Right?
You say Helena, I say Helena. Let's call the whole thing off.
They do say it two different ways.
WB Frog?
No, that's my Louis Armstrong.
Yeah, I know, but it's just funny because of the frog. So he's talking to her.
Just call her Wombat.
Yeah, Wombat. There you go. That's even better. I love that. So he's talking to Wombat, or Wombat's talking to Indy, and she's like, "You need to be here," blah blah blah, and he's like, I knew the line that was coming from Indiana Jones, and I started to like tear up because I love Indiana Jones. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'll give all credit to James Mangold for making me realize how much I actually love Indiana Jones. Not just the franchise, but like the character itself. And I think it goes back to just binging a lot of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles series. That all the movies, and I'm watching this. This is at the end of the movie. And by the way, I had no problem with her punching Indy to get back to the present day. Had no problem with that.
People have a problem with that?
I didn't have a problem. People did, yeah. People thought some agency was taking away from Indy about making that decision for himself, which I understand that point of criticism, but it didn't bother me. Anyways, as soon as he says, for who, I started losing it. I started losing it, and just tears, man. Like I was at like full capacity, my tear ducts, full capacity, and it's just waterfall, dude. Just luckily there's no one by me, like for like a couple of seats around me, and
you only have one hat. You can only do one side.
I had no hat, Kevin. It was just my plain old face, okay? And I am not joking you. I this really caught me by surprise, but like I even texted this to you. I had the quivering lip, just like the like dude. I've never cried this hard during a movie ever, like ever. I'm like, what the is happening to me right now? And then he does the callback scene with Marion, the where doesn't it hurt? And that's when that was just like, holy shit, like this is too much for me, man. Like
now you were on a date, right? Jones. So did that date call you back the next day? Or?
Yeah, I'll tell you where it doesn't hurt, okay?
Yeah.
And so that's the end of the movie. But I will say this overall, really loved it. I will say though, there's one shot that really bummed me out, and it's because of like this is where we are with modern filmmaking. And I know back in the 80s and even 90s, this would have been an actual practical shot with a stunt performer. They pull out to a wide shot. It's in the prologue. And Indy jumps up on top of the train car and starts running. It looks horrible. It looks god-awful. It's a CGI Indiana Jones hopping up onto the train car and starting to run down the train cars, right? It looks absolutely awful. I was beside myself in the theater. I was like, oh, this does not feel like Indiana Jones. That particular shot, the whole Troy sequence, the whole prologue, I loved it as another Indiana Jones adventure. I wish we had prime Harrison Ford to do that sort of thing, but I love that adventure. It felt indie.
It was the Flash revisiting him, so that's why it looks CGI. It's just that chrono wheel.
It was on purpose. Yeah.
It was on purpose.
But here's what I'll say though. I was just like,
that bad for me.
If this was back in 1989, we would either have Harrison Ford on wires or whatever, running on top of, or it'd be a stunt performer actually on an actual moving train with an actual person on top of the train doing that shot. And now we're in 2023, and we'll just do it CGI. And that to me is so unfortunate, because a lot of the stuff that I love about Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford is that it was a real guy hanging between a tank and a wall, and like that's actually him. There's a shot in Raiders where he's actually being on the ground being towed by the truck, right? Like that's him for like a shot or two.
How about
there's
the
actual
hat
stunt
to keep the fedora on his head? He stapled it to his head. He had a staple gun.
That's
and
crazy.
He was stapling it for the horse.
When like he's in the water when he comes back up, and it's like, yeah. So like it's just some shots like that where I'm like, man, this is 2023 movie making, and like it just because Indiana Jones is such an old school pulpy like type of way of making movies, which is super nostalgia, right? For me at this point. And so there was just some stuff in there. I'm like, man, if back in the day, this is totally Indiana Jones, but they would have done it practically. And now it's 2023, and we'll just do it CGI. So that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But
final rankings, Frank.
So it goes Raiders, Crusade for me, and then I'm gonna narrowly put Dial of Destiny ahead of. Oh, I'm sorry, nearly ahead of Temple and Crystal Skull. Temple and Crystal Skull are like they're pretty much the same. Yeah, but I'll put Dial in the third spot just narrowly.
Brandon?
I think I'm going to do Raiders, Last Crusade. I think I had Crystal Skull, then Temple of Doom, and then Dial of Destiny on the bottom. But I will say I am the kind of person who needs to watch a movie multiple times. Back in my heyday, I would have already seen this movie 3 to 5 times by now. And so I'm going to see it again, give myself some room to digest, because I might fall in love with it. You never know. That's what happened when I watched Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, man. The movie gets funnier every time you watch it.
It's so good. Oh my gosh.
And before I give you my list, we were talking about this last week. Karen Allen, a couple years ago, clarified that he wasn't a pedophile.
I'm so glad we're just relitigating the past. I love it.
Pedophile. No,
but he is a groomer.
In the article, she was basically surmising that she was 16, he was probably 24, and she was like all into him, and maybe they like shared a kiss, but then like she was way more into him than he was. Like, no, it's not like he was banging some 16-year-old. But yeah, I go Crusade, Raiders, Temple of Doom, Dial Destiny, and Crystal Skull. Temple of Doom, like I can't. I'll go back and do another ranking after I watch all of them again. Because I'm excited to see that. But the only other cool thing would have been a little short round reference when Helena was talking about how she met that kid. If he would have just looked at that kid and been like, and saw them interacting, and he goes, "Oh, I had a friend just like you." That would have been a cool reference. And come on, that scene on the boat, bro. Goosebumps again when he's explaining about how, and I called it. I texted you guys after you'd both seen it. Thanks for not confirming it. But I had predicted that Mutt was going to be known to have already been killed in Vietnam because that was the era of the time. Unfortunately,
I think that was kind of came out before the movie, but
it never did. I look, dude. I used to
really?
look.
Okay.
I even checked Reddit reviews.
Might have been in one of the leaks. Might have been in the leaks.
But I his thing where he's like, I would tell him not to go to the war. And I would tell him because he was, and she's like, "Oh, how would you do it?" And he's like, "I would tell him that he would die." And then he goes on to this and explains what they went through and like his heartbreak. And to be honest, that one sentence and then that act of, and I even liked how he said, "Oh, he joined him to piss me off" or whatever. That makes Crystal Skull a better movie. I think people are gonna now watch the movie knowing that Mutt, dies later, and will look more. And when I'm doing my rewatch, it's gonna be interesting seeing that. It's gonna feel kind of heartbreaking. It's kind of like Clerks 3. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Clerks 3. But in between Clerks 2 and 3, they kill off Rosario Dawson in a drunk driving car accident, which is just horrific because they even say it happens a couple of weeks after Clerks 2. How can you ever watch Clerks 2 now and see that happy ending where they're all together, knowing that she's about to get mangled?
It's brutal.
It's brutal. So I defend Kevin Smith's decision to do that. I've read interviews and stuff. Like, he had to do it, and it's great storytelling, but it just ruined. Like, for Clerks 2, it's like so depressing now. So, but with Crystal Skull, I think it represents that movie is father and son reuniting before that son is going to be taken from him. And like, thank God they did it now instead of finding out, from Marion later, like, you had a son and you never met him and he died. So like, that makes Crystal Skull, I think, a lot more special for me moving forward. So, and we have to talk about the Star Wars reference. I didn't hear anyone say I have a bad feeling about this unless you got, maybe it was wondering where my pee breaks. But didn't he say? Am I wrong?
I don't think so.
He
says it in one of the movies. I think he says it in.
He says it in Crystal Skull.
Raiders and stuff.
Oh, he says the same. Yeah, but
when he says, remember in Force Awakens, he's like, Leia doesn't want to talk to me. Right? Doesn't he say the same thing about Marion? Marion doesn't want to see me. Like, I gotta believe that is a on-the-nose
There's similarities there, and I think it is. I definitely thought about that too watching the movie, but I'm like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's if I had never seen Star Wars, I would say, oh, this totally makes sense for this guy, his situation. Yeah. So I'm forgiving of that part.
Did you just to touch on the Mutt stuff, did you notice the opening of the movie? There's a picture of Mutt next to Sean Connery as the camera pans.
Yeah, I had mistaken it and this, by the way, the next time I watched Young Indy, Frank, you realize how much Sean Patrick Flannery kind of looks like Shia, like in some scenes, like that shot. It was good casting because I thought it was a picture of Young Indy in his World War I.
I didn't pick up that it was Mutt. I didn't at first. But then once he talked about Mutt dying in the war, I was like, "Oh, that was his flag, and that's his flag." Yeah.
I thought it was a picture of Young India. I was like, "Oh my god, like that's a cool reference." And then, but you hear it on the radio too. The first time you hear about Mutt dying on that boat, it's when they're doing the news report about like looking out for Indy. So, yeah, all in all, good. I can't wait to see it again. I understand why people probably didn't like it or felt they should have left it in the tomb after on the sunset with Last Crusade. I also thought the de-aging was fine. I do not know why they don't do the new technique that they've been doing with the deep fake. It sounds like it looks like a lot better. Like the deep fake.
I think they did.
Secret Invasion is way better.
Yeah, so I think the opening scene was probably like a combination, and they relied, I think, more heavily on like the de-aging technology. Yeah. But it was very obvious to me the second flashback that happens a little bit more in the future when he has like a little bit of like gray hairs. That was 100% a deep fake, and it looked a lot better.
Yeah, definitely did.
I was watching Dan Merle's review. It's a good review, by the way, if you haven't watched it. He talks about that.
Friend of the podcast.
He talks about that sequence, Brandon, and he's like, he's pretty much wearing the same thing he was wearing in The Fugitive. And I'm like, damn. I'm like, that's pretty. Yeah, that's
Maybe
pretty
it's a
good.
deleted scene.
Yeah. All right. So in the notes, I said let's do a review for 10 to 15. I think we're at like a half hour now,
Yeah.
but let's move on to Brandon. Brandon, you found something out in the wild, and you
Yeah.
texted it to both Kevin and I. And look, it's quite alarming. I don't know.
By the way,
who's
in our
charge.
defense, we're not going to spend 25 minutes on Star Wars Outlaws trailer, so we got plenty of time.
I mean, well, you never know.
25 minutes on a trailer? Come on.
I said 20 to 25. Oh, and also the Qi'ra thing. That's why that's included. Anyways,
Stop talking about
Brandon,
my dog.
tell the folks what you found out in the wild.
Sure. Should I like pull it up on my phone? Are you gonna put it on the screen?
I'm gonna put it on the screen right now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna pull it up on my phone just to like so that I can have accurate reference to what
I'm
we're
going to pull
talking
up. I'm going
about
to pull
here.
up the tweet, your text again too. That's
Okay. So we were visiting San Francisco this past weekend.
You go
We
fine. How are
Skywalker
the
were-
Ranch.
wings? Good wings.
good wings in San Francisco, some San Fran wings. And we were in the store, and I saw there was like a whole bunch of like almost like custom-ish made like birthday cards, and one of them is a picture of Grogu with a little party hat. It says, "Your birthday it is. Celebrate it you must." But
Hold on, real quick. Sorry. I hope, Frank, you crop out what's the card under it, because it's just a bunch of bare asses. And it's like, happy birthday, sweet. I don't know what it says under it. Sweet
gotta say
ass?
cheeks.
Sweet cheeks. Yeah. Sorry, dude. Remember, don't blur. You can unblur. It's fine. It's cartoon ass, but
It's fine. It's
yeah,
fine.
sorry. I didn't mean to derail you, but like
That's
sorry,
pretty funny.
It was a bunch of asses.
Yeah, there was some interesting ones for sure. But yeah, why is Grogu talking backwards? Only Yoda talks backwards, right?
Yeah, I was
Yaddle
I was
doesn't
like,
talk backwards.
first of all, when you sent us this card, I was like, oh yeah, cute picture of Grogu. Okay, whatever. And then I read it, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not right. That's not accurate at all. Who are these people? What company is making this card? Do you know? Do we know? It's not Hallmark.
I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, judging from the Snoop Dogg under it, it looks like it's like a personal company. You know what I mean? Like,
They probably don't even know what they have. They probably think it's Yoda.
it's not Hallmark. But I'll say this, and to back up what Brandon's saying, it's kind of a funny card, and I get why they do it, because it's just like, your birthday it is, celebrate it you must. But even Vandar in KOTOR spoke forward. Like, the only one that speaks reverse is Yoda. And there's an old article and an interview with Frank Oz, who said, and I don't know if it was his headcanon, it definitely wasn't something that George told him, but maybe Frank, after he decided to do it, told George this is the backstory, and George was like, oh, I like that. But he was saying that Yoda speaks in reverse to honor his old master, and that apparently in other cultures, samurai culture or whatever, sometimes the mentor or the mentee would emulate the mentor in dialect or speech, especially if they grew up under them. And so whoever Yoda's mentor was, and maybe we'll find that out one day, doubtful, but whoever his overall mentor was, he kept speaking in reverse to honor his now like lost, or his master that's no longer with them. So that is from the words, from the mouth of Frank Oz himself. So Brandon, you have every right to text this in disgust, and you were quite angry in the text. A lot of all caps and exclamation
Furious I
point.
was.
It's crazy. You were like George Lucas is rolling over in his grave right now. I'm like, George
Yeah.
ain't even dead.
It's like, I'm still alive.
He's like,
but-
Kathleen's ruining Hallmark ruining cards.
Actually, George Lucas was in the store. He brought it to the counter. He was like, excuse me, this isn't canon. This isn't certified G canon.
Just wanna make
Sorry."
sure. Yeah.
This is Frank's. Yeah, exactly.
but
But yeah,
Yeah.
Frank Oz. Yeah.
But
Even-
hold on. I want to say something about Yoda honoring his mentor. You couldn't just like, why do you gotta talk like him? You couldn't like
I
maybe
get
like
the feeling-
dress like him, have like a piece of jewelry, but you want to
listen,
like change your entire way you speak.
Look, if
I
Kaiser
get it.
were to pass away suddenly, I'll start speaking like him in his honor. I'll be like, well, and, yeah, you
The
got
whole
no
time?
class. And, yeah.
listen, I get it. Like maybe like something he like started doing ironically, and then he couldn't stop.
Sure.
Like like
Look,
You know, like,
we
when I
honor
was in high
Kevin all
school-
the time when we say "guy" at the end of our sentences,
That's
but
true,
we
man.
don't. But we don't do it all the time.
could you imagine
Um,
every sentence?
Actually, though, while you were speaking, I did want to look it up from another site to see what someone else said. Thankfully, that pop-up video. I think I muted this channel, so it's not going to blow your eardrums out. It says here, the first time hearing Yoda's speech patterns is confusing for anyone. All the words are there, but it's straight up backwards. It makes listeners focus. It turns out that was exactly the point. So now this is, by the way, contradicting Frank Oz. However, Yoda's speech patterns, George Lucas wanted viewers and characters to hone in on what Yoda was saying because he was so full of wisdom. However, Yoda's speech patterns weren't just to make viewers focus. It was designed to make their lives easier. Here's a quote from Paul Duncan's The Star Wars Archives on how he came up with Yoda's language. Lucas said, I was going to do the voice, but I don't do it well. Mostly we had these strange languages and voices that were created out of foreign languages. I didn't want to go through a whole movie where everybody was reading subtitles. He had a lot of dialogue, so I had to come up with a language that was alien but still understandable. So I reversed everything around. The language was designed to make you focus on the boring philosophical lessons. Now I'm remembering the Frank Oz thing. So after that, I like how I'm like flip-flopping or I'm trying to cover for myself. But I think when he told Frank that, I think Frank in his head was trying, because I remember I even said that it was Frank's headcanon he always gave it to. So maybe George said, hey, you got to do it that way. And then Frank, for himself, was like, oh, this is why Yoda would do it. Oh, wait, I should continue reading. George Lucas's comments make it seem like Yoda's speech patterns were a natural thing for him. However, the original Yoda had a different idea. In a recent interview, Dave Filoni, who was explaining why Yaddle doesn't speak like Yoda, recalled a conversation with Frank Oz. He said, Frank Oz told me once that Yoda speaks very specifically in honor of his old master. That was what he had thought about it. So I'm not going crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah,
both can work.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I had a whole group of friends. We all talked like idiots, just because like I'm sure one person started doing it, and then it all like just caught on. You know, like we would just like end every sentence with like for no reason. So it'd be like, wow, look at Frank over there filming a podcast for no reason. Okay, and you just keep doing dumb stuff like that. And that's what happened to Yoda.
You just you just dumb stuff, Yoda.
For no reason.
For no reason. Yoda talks backwards for no reason.
Well, you know what? I hope you went to that store, Brandon, took all of those cards and threw them in the trash, because that's inaccurate. We can't be teaching the future generations that Grogu's talking.
And his name's not Baby Yoda either. It's Grogu. And they were saying it on the road. That's something we forgot to talk about. We should probably review I watched it, the Star Wars, what is it? The behind the scenes of season.
Yeah, that's why I didn't put it in the show notes, because...
Yeah, we forgot to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't see it? Oh, yeah. I did my homework, which you guys didn't?
That's not true, because it's not in the show notes. I knew Brandon didn't watch it, and I didn't watch it. So
well, Brandon doesn't have he has to drive to your house in order to watch it. So.
Yeah.
Right.
The way that Dave Filoni intended.
But they were calling him Baby Yoda, like still like Favreau in interviews, and I'm so I get it. It was just it's easy. Like
I'm gonna start.
I taught my daughter who Grogu is or Yoda by just saying Yoda, because so now if she sees Grogu or Yoda, she says Yoda, which is fine. Baby steps, literally. You know. So.
I'm gonna start calling Yoda Grown Grogu.
Grown.
You know what? You should thread that. That might get a lot of rethreads.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to Star Wars Outlaws. The trailer and gameplay trailer came out, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago at this point now. And Brandon, what are your initial thoughts on some of the footage that you may or may not have seen?
The gameplay or the trailer?
Well, all of it, just all of it, all together.
I think it looks really cool. It's what is it? Is it Ubisoft or Ubisoft?
Ubisoft. I say Ubisoft.
I always said Ubisoft my whole life. Anyway, so it's not EA, right? Like everything's been EA basically up in those points. So it's cool to be out of the game. It's nice to see like another company kind of like, seeing what they can do with Star Wars, and it looks like a different take in it, but it's still within the Star Wars universe. And I thought the trailer looked really interesting. The gameplay footage looks fun. This is like totally up my alley, although I probably still won't play it. But if I wanted to play a Star Wars game, this sounds like a good place to start.
Kevin, give me your thoughts.
I love the heroine, our hero.
Yeah.
Heroine,
yeah.
I used to always say heroine to make sure people didn't think I was talking about heroin, the drug. But I like that our hero or heroine looks kind of like Ripley from Alien, aliens.
Because I think they're styling the 70s, early 80s
which
hair.
I love.
Yeah,
and I love that about now I forget his name. He befriended Zeb in Rebels. Why am I?
Callus.
My brain. Callus. They gave him 70s like style. Crix
Chops,
Maydeen,
yeah,
like
yeah.
and with Anakin with his long hair in Episode 3 started looking 70s. Like, and I like that they were like kind of bridging, like, because in A New Hope, everybody kind of looked like the raging disco 70s, right? So I really loved her design. I do think it's funny that every Star Wars game you need to have a character that is on your shoulder that does like it's like this is another version of the droid. Like, it's fine. I might get some flack for it, but when I first saw that, I was like, oh, here we go. Like, it's another one. Like, every game you need to have it, but it might be it's Alien at least, and they're gonna sell tons of freaking fluffy toys. For sure. The trailer looks good. It's kind of like that underworld stuff that we never got. But I wasn't sold on the trailer. Like, the story looked good, but I was just like, okay, cool. I'm like, Matt. But when I watched the gameplay thing, and maybe we could link it in the description or whatever, or you just type in Star Wars Outlaws official gameplay walkthrough. It was released like 3 weeks ago. That's what sold me, because it had shades of Grand Theft Auto. It had shades of No Man's Sky. Like, you get in the ship and fly and leave the planet. There's no loading screens. Then you're out.
And that is the loading screen. I think they masked it that way, which is cool.
Smart.
Which is cool. Yeah, it's smart.
I forget what. I think one of the games where they always hid the loading screen when you're like. I think it might have been the first Jedi.
It's in both games.
Where he's going Survivor. Through the wall and he's sneaking through a wall.
Yeah,
and he's doing
Fallen Order and Survivor, they do it that way too. Yeah.
And the Mass Effect was always elevators and stuff, but this one, it just seems so flawless. But like, I loved that, and like the Indiana Jones, like with the whip and stuff like that. Like, it would have been really cool if they like. I'm not hating on this character, okay? But it would have been really cool if they, like, Dr. Aphra is such a cool character, if they just gave her, like, someone that was already established and gave a game based on that. I like that we're getting new characters, don't get me wrong. But so she has shades of like Lara Croft and Han Solo, and I think she's going to be a fascinating character. And I think the gameplay is what sold me on it, though. Like, where I was like, man, like, you go from one like escape scene to a speeder bike chase into the ship, then into another thing in the floating thing, and it just. But the level of open worldness reminded me, like, I feel like watching Frank play Jedi Survivor or. I watched the walkthroughs. I obviously didn't play that game, but you could tell me like the open worldness of Grand Theft Auto, where you can go from like one side of the city to the other and just do random things. Go, steal a plane, go to a strip club. Like, you do so many random things. I like how I say go to a strip club, but go to random things, right? This game feels like that too, where like you're not on some set path. You could literally get on that speeder bike and you can go anywhere on that planet and you'll be able to leave. And I think they've been touting how it's an open world game. So I got vibes, which I didn't expect to get, of like, this is Grand Theft Auto in space, which is pretty effing cool. And I don't know her story quite yet, if she's like, she a bounty hunter or like a treasure hunter or whatever, but like it looks good.
Somewhere along the lines of bounty hunter, smuggler type of thing. I think she's taking these jobs, and I mean the story is centered around a classic one last heist, to ride off into the sunset. We need this one, and we'll be good. We'll be set for life, type of deal. Which is kind of stereotypical of these things, but for everything you had just said, Kevin, in terms of the world and its openness and the gameplay trailer, I thought just the initial trailer looked pretty cool. I thought it looked really stunning. But then to watch the gameplay walkthrough, some of the stealth stuff that was happening in the Pikes, like little hideout, whatever. Again, the chase into the town, that scene in the cantina, going into the ship. I like that they gave you a little taste of everything, but not the whole enchilada, if you will. It looks a lot of fun. The character seems really interesting. I'm curious about the backstory and if it'll delve into any of those areas. I will say the companion, the little creature, I think it might be a little bit, it seems to me, and this could be wrong, that it might be more, this little creature might be more, I want to say, quote unquote, more useful than BD1. BD1 did a few things, but I feel like this creature is going to have a lot more things to do and manipulate and help you out in different ways. A little more entertaining ways, I think, like how it wouldn't press a button and all that stuff, and how it can distract or what have you. I think that's really interesting if that's really more inside the gameplay.
Do you think you get to control that other cool? So is that battle droid with the cloak or whatever with the jacket?
ND5, the commando droid.
Yeah, how do you know these names already? You're so smart.
I just watched it today.
Is
yeah.
that a droid from the Clone Wars? Am I looking at that right? That's like one of the. Okay, I recognized it. Okay.
That droid's also in Jedi Survivor. And I think
cool.
Yeah. So like, also that droid looks badass, and like also it has like a really interesting personality behind it. You don't really think of battle droids having, I guess, a more sophisticated type of personality, because you think of like the B1 droids and all little, Roger and all that stuff, right? A little wonky, a little funny.
Yeah.
Welcome.
But this droid seems a little bit more serious, has a lot more going on inside its brain, if you will, which makes it really interesting. And the way it wears that cloak, I mean, talk about a badass. Like, I'm curious what kind of role that droid's going to play and its capabilities within the game.
Side tangent. Has anyone ever explained how battle droids can see if their eyes are painted on?
Sonic waves. Yeah,
he's like Daredevil. Yeah,
that's why they say Roger,
Oh.
Roger twice. Just a Roger.
Okay.
Roger.
If battle droids are all like Daredevil, there's no excuse for losing that.
It's true.
Come on, you got an army of Daredevils, bro.
But one thing I wanted to
that character intrigues me though. That'll be fun.
Yeah, one thing that I want to kind of touch on is this article I saw that was written on Star Wars News net.com about whether or not Qi'ra could make an appearance in this game, because it takes place between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and we know that from the comics that Qi'ra is around between that in that same time period between Empire and Jedi, and given the fact that she's running Crimson Dawn along with Darth Maul, or at this point Darth Maul will have died at this point in the storyline, or in the timeline rather, what Qi'ra is exactly up to, because also in that trailer we see Han Solo in Carbonite, very briefly, but he's in Carbonite, and at this point in time in the timeline he is in Carbonite being transported by Boba Fett, and I think that is Jabba the Hutt, unless it's another kind of hut, but I think that is Jabba the Hutt. It will be interesting if like you go on a mission with this character and you get recruited by Qi'ra to try and she wants to rescue Han from Boba Fett, and maybe that's some weird type of side tangent. It would be interesting. I doubt it, but that would be cool. I'm going to ask both of you guys, do you want to see Qi'ra back in some sort of story or show or what have you? And B, do you think if it's in this game, is that the best way to do it? Kevin?
I do want to see her again. It's funny you keep saying. I'm so used to now hearing my daughter's name, right?
Yeah.
Qi'ra with a Q is what we're talking about. My daughter's name with a K, but
and no apostrophe.
yeah. I mean, we haven't. You haven't seen her. You haven't seen her birth certificate. Maybe I added an apostrophe.
You're gonna go back to the courthouse just to.
I'll be right back. So yeah, I'm looking forward. Well, I think that. I really loved Solo, and I would like them to do a show or a movie to like resolve that in live action, but we never got to see Luke's temple get taken out by Kylo Ren. You have to read a comic book for that, and when I finally read it about how Snoke seduced him and he met the Knights of Ren, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Would I have loved to see a movie? And if they decide to do a movie on it and they want to contradict everything, they can do that because they've been doing that before. But I'd rather see it in live action. But any due that Qi'ra can get, it's just a weird story thread that's just going to kind of be left. Like, you can't have Maul go after Han. Han can have never seen the Force because he doesn't believe it in A New Hope. So you can't have Han square off with. So you need to protect Han from Maul. So I think that ends Qi'ra and Han's story forever, right? Like, but that's just a weird thread that wouldn't ever. But like, I think you're pitching of like trying to save Han, but that means like you would fail in it.
Yeah.
Then unless there's a multiverse, because everything's a multiverse now. But. Yeah, so I really do like the character Qi'ra, and I was hoping for more. I don't know if that Lando series is still going anymore,
right,
or if he could show up, or she could show up later, or maybe we get an old version of her in the Filoni. Like, I don't know how old she. No, she'd be way too old for. No, she. Well, yeah, she could be in the time of the Mandalorian timeline. So yeah, I to answer your question, I'm gonna keep it brief. Well, it's too late to keep it brief, but yes, I would love to see her again in the video game. It would be great. I think it's a good idea. Just the execution of it and I definitely want to get that. Hopefully bring the same actress to voice it.
I do want to say real quick before I get to Brandon's thoughts that the article does point out that in the game there's all these syndicates, and Crimson Dawn is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, crime syndicate in the galaxy. And if Qi'ra is running Crimson Dawn, one of the biggest crime syndicates, like it would be pretty wild to have like the Pikes and whoever else, all their syndicates in this game, but not Crimson Dawn. How can you bring in Crimson Dawn and not have some, at least a reference to Qi'ra or her appear in this game in some shape or form? So I really like what that article had to say about, like, it would make no sense if you talk about Crimson Dawn and there's no mention of Qi'ra or what have you. Brandon, thoughts on Qi'ra overall, and what would you like to see?
Yeah, well, first of all, if Indiana Jones could see the Ark of the Covenant and voodoo magic and still call the Holy Grail a bedtime story, then maybe Han Solo could meet Darth Maul and still not believe in the Force. I don't know. But yeah, no, I think it would be really cool to see Qi'ra appear in this game. That could be like a fun surprise, like they use her likeness, like have her do some performance capture and have her like record the dialogue and everything, kind of like how we saw like Saw Gerrera in Jedi Fallen Order.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I get the titles mixed up in my
Yeah,
head.
who else needs to be there? Prince Zizur, then. Remember, he was the main villain in Shadows of the Empire.
Right.
He was running the Black Sun, and you see him as a hologram at the end of that Clone Wars. When you see
in the last arc, in the Siege of Mandalore arc,
So maybe you'll see Prince Zizur there too. How cool would that be? Sorry, Brandon. I just wanted to.
No, yeah. I mean, that's basically my thoughts of like, yeah, it'd be cool. It seems like they've got something up their sleeve. There was like that interview in that article. Ben Mendelsohn asked Emilia Clarke about appearing, and she kind of was like a little awkward in her response.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So maybe she has recorded something for the game, and it was just a really interesting timing that Ben Mendelsohn said something, and she's like, well, actually, I have a little small part in this game. Although the article does go to say there's not really a whole lot you can extrapolate from her facial expressions. No. Like, don't even waste your time. But it is a fun thing to think about, that what if, we'll find out in a year or so, because this is coming out in 2024, the game. But I think
we'll be dead.
I think I think the game Star Wars Outlaws has a lot of potential, especially the setting, the time and place in which it's set, for the potential for numerous other scoundrels or outlaws, what have you, to pop up in this game along the way, whether it's, again, Boba Fett, or you have someone else, I don't know, I think Cad Bane could even show up at this point still. He's still around at this point in time. So you could have different other people, pop up here and there, and I think it'd be pretty cool given the nature of the world that you're going to be immersed in, given the main character is a smuggler of sorts. So there's a lot of nefarious people that she could run into, that we could run into in the game. And I think that'd be pretty cool way to tie in. Yes, it would, quote unquote, make the universe smaller, as people like to say, but at the same time, I think it kind of includes her more into the wider part of the universe by coming across, like Indiana Jones, young Indiana Jones, coming across all these historical figures in his younger years. Maybe our main character, I think her name is, what's her name? Kess? Kay or Kess, something like that? I forget. Coming across all these legendary legacy characters, if you will.
Could you imagine if the game was called Scoundrels instead of Outlaws?
I was actually going to say, what if we named our podcast Star Wars Outlaws, and then this game came out?
I mean, we'd get a cease and desist because we have 432 subscribers.
I'm going to go right up to Kathleen Kennedy and say, you better lawyer up, asshole. I'm coming back for 20%.
I'm coming
back for all.
I fucking love that scene.
It's so good.
I do want to say, if we're done with that, before you move on to your announcement, Frank, we forgot to do Q&A, so I actually posted real quick.
Did you?
I said, hey, we actually forgot to do Q&A, so if you have any, and one came through on the Discord.
Okay.
Saul started typing. I saw Saul was typing and then wimped out.
He does that.
Saul,
he does that.
You started typing and then you deleted it. I don't know what you were going to say.
He's a tease.
But Boost did come through here, because otherwise I was going to have to not say anything and then like sneakily delete the post because it's embarrassing that no one wrote.
I know. Once again, Kevin, I didn't put it on the on the show notes for a reason, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
If it's not on the show notes, Kevin, that means it's
I got it. I'm hijacking this show. I am the captain now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know. Maybe you forgot to do it. So he didn't forget to do it. It was not planned. So Booze, I'm sorry, we're not going to answer your question. No, it's a good story. It's a good question, real quick. What's your Star Wars origin story? How did you become a fan that you are today? So I'll keep it quick because obviously it's not in the show notes. But Booze, my Star Wars origin story. As a kid, I liked it, but I was always more a He-Man and G.I. Joe guy. But I do remember my first movie theater memory was Luke doing the backflip in Return of the Jedi and saying, "Your thoughts betray you, Father." And then I remember I always wanted the toys, but I always just got G.I. Joes and stuff instead. And then they were kind of hard to find later as I got a little, as He-Man and Turtles and stuff got more popular. But I remember a kid on my block had the Imperial Walker, which was just really cool, and I was jealous. And then I found my love for it because I always loved the music. And then when the special editions were coming out, right before the special editions, they released the movie soundtrack. And it was a really cool packaging. And I remember getting all 3 movies and the CDs and listening to it on the way to school. And then I remember it was such a nerd. Like, a special edition came out, and I had my Pathfinder. I was a new 16-year-old, 17-year-old, like driving for the first time. And I rolled the windows down and I blared the Star Wars theme outside while people were waiting in line for the special edition. And then they all cheers. And then I honked and drove off and felt like the biggest rock star ever. But yeah, so then the special, but it was the, and I've talked about it on the
it was A New Hope
podcast. But the reawakening is when I saw Independence Day, and I guess we celebrated that anniversary literally this year. It was 25, whatever it was. I was in one of the 3 theaters that played the trailer for the special edition before Independence Day. They did a test run. It's like only in 3 theaters of the country you could see the special edition, and that's what reawakened it. And then the rest is history. So, how about you guys?
Yeah, I think it's always kind of been in my life. I remember watching it on VHS. I think in my grandma's house. I think I told this story on our A New Hope episode of the podcast. I think you can get a much more detailed recount on that episode. But I will say briefly, I just remember just always watching. It was the VHS of A New Hope and Raiders of the Lost Ark were like right next to each other. So I watched those together a lot. But growing up, like, Star Wars was just one of those things that, like, it captivated me. It looked familiar but so strange at the same time and otherworldly, which I think really captivated my young mind at that time. So it's always just kind of been around. And then for the longest time, I've talked about this too before, I didn't know Return of the Jedi existed. Only just A New Hope and Empire. And then eventually I did see Return of the Jedi after a while. But yeah, I don't really know. I think also just being, so I have 5 other sisters. But at that time growing up, it was just, I only had 2 other sisters. So it was just me. And then growing up, I had, my other sisters were born. And so for the longest time, like, Star Wars in a sense was kind of like my brother, if you will, like, where I could, like, that's where I went, where when my sisters were, my mom and everybody else was doing their own thing, other girly stuff, if you will, stuff that didn't interest me. There was always Star Wars, and I could always go to Star Wars, and that was my thing. And yeah, so it's just always been a part of my life, especially being born after it, like 9 years after it was initially released.
Anakin's age, isn't he? 9 years.
yeah, actually, yeah. So yeah, always been part of my life, and as I got older, more and more in my life. So, Brandon.
Yeah, I could just picture Frank not knowing Return of the Jedi exists and watching the ending of Empire, going like, "Wow, what a perfect place to end it! perfect ending to the saga." But no, that's actually like the special addiction. Well, I guess I was addicted to Star Wars for quite some time.
My special addiction.
Yeah. The special edition VHS tape of Empire Strikes Back. I had that at home, and that was my first introduction to Star Wars. And I mean, the rest is history. What more can I say?
Yeah. All right. Well, before we close out,
thanks for saving face. It was like I was like Jerry Maguire. Who's coming with me? You know.
Yeah.
And also now knowing that it's not on the schedule, I'm glad that not like 10 or 15 came up because.
Yeah.
Come on, man! I tried to keep the episode short, so we got you, Booze. Thank you.
You tried to keep the episode. You kept adding stuff in, Kevin. What do you mean? You kept?
That's what I'm saying. I'm the one that was the detriment right now. I have added the Marion thing, but look, that's just that's the way it goes.
That's how we roll. To wrap up this episode, want to talk about what we're going to be covering the next several weeks in the run up to Ahsoka. So what we're going to be doing is covering 2 quote-unquote essential Ahsoka episodes on the show. We'll talk about them for the next 5 weeks. We're counting 10 episodes in total. So next week, actually, starting next week, it's going to start next week, we're going to talk about 2 episodes from the Clone Wars, Season 3, Episode 21 and 22, Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt. We're going to talk about those next week, Wookie. And if you'd like to ask us for our Q&A section of the show, if you want to send questions in about those episodes, and that can aid us in our discussion when we talk about these episodes. And we're going to do that for the next 5 weeks as we run up to the premiere of the Ahsoka series on Disney+. And then on that 6th week, the week before Ahsoka premieres, we'll do a whole preview episode of what our expectation is, what we want to see, all that good stuff. A preview episode of the Ahsoka series on week 6. We got 6 weeks to go, guys. 6 weeks to go.
Listen, my friends, I'm a big proponent of doing rewatches, curated rewatches. Like I said, I'm doing that with Indiana Jones. I've done that with many movies with my wife. Like before Flash, we watched like Batman and Batman Returns. Before Spider-Man No Way Home, I knew she'd like it, but got to show her the Andrew Garfield ones. Like, this will be fun. Frank has done a really good job at picking out episodes, and we kind of talked about it before the episode, and like just fine tune it a little. But like these are going to be your perfect Ahsoka refresher course. It's intimidating to try to watch an entire series. I'm excited to see Brandon's thoughts because he hasn't really watched that much of Rebels, so he's going to get 2 excellent episodes of Rebels to watch, and to revisit some of those Ahsoka episodes from The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. I'm excited too. So join us. It'll be fun. Join us along, and we'll have that Q&A, which, by the way, if you open your Scoundrels Inc., Frank, it feels like the listener Q&A is on your breakdown, so you might want to check it.
I'll check the edit.
Or you might want to edit. Make sure that you edit positions. You can't let me edit it, buddy.
Well, if you have access to the Scoundrels account, you dweeb.
That's true. I'm a dweeb, but no, the rewatch is going to be fun. Yeah. Like I've always been a fan of the episodes that kind of have no direction and just do like news tidbits and stuff. But I think getting back to this will be fun because it's really fun talking about it and revisiting. And like I said, Frank picked some awesome episodes. So join us. It'll be fun. We'll get a lot of discourse talking about it in Discord or in the comments. We'd really like to increase like the comments too and get you guys involved. So we will start, like, when you guys leave comments on the channel, it actually helps the video. And if you do that, like, we'll make sure to go back, because I think sometimes people think they're never read. They're always read by us. They're usually replied to by us. But maybe we'll start going and reading some of them too. You know, I like to extend the episodes as long as I can. So just know that it's not falling into the ether world that no one's ever going to read them. So especially this revisit, I think it might make the Ahsoka premiere that much more special when we finally get there. So good job, Frank.
Yeah, and each week we'll let you know the next 2 episodes. So you tune in for Padawan Lost and Wookiee Hunt next week, and then next week we'll tell you the other 2 episodes after that we're going to watch. So we're going to kind of tease you along a little bit, and hopefully that's fun for everyone. Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for this week here on Scoundrels Inc. And as we always say, Wookie Wookie.
And be sure to follow our thread.
Wookie Wookie.
Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.